Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on digital financial literacy training in the Uganda's refugee response. I'm very aware that a lot of people are still joining the call, but I'm also aware that we want to have maximum time for the panel, which is the second half of this call. And so while people are still joining, I'll just go ahead and start by giving a couple of introductory points and introducing the people behind the scenes. So this webinar today is organized by Smart Communities Coalition. Michael Matosian, I hope I pronounced that right, is on this call. And then also by the Cash Working Group, represented by Eunice Mwende, and ULearn, represented by myself, Marieke Deleu, or Malaika, as some people call me. So we are the core organizing committee, but it's been a very big team putting this together. And I just want to shout out to a couple of people who will be playing a role today. So we have Charlène, who will be facilitating the chat box. So please, throughout the call, feel free to drop comments and suggestions in the chat box. We will also be sharing a number of resources with you, so keep an eye out for those. We will also be sharing the links to all of the tools we'll be using on the call there. We have Andy, who will be taking the notes today, because this webinar will feed into a learning brief, which will be produced on the same topic of digital financial literacy training in Uganda's refugee response. So notes are very important, as is the recording. You noticed that the recording has started. The recording might also be made available online on our website or another website. We have Aletta, also from ULearn, who is one of the breakout group's co-facilitators. We have Colleen, who is the administrator of this call, our communications coordinator, who's designed all of the artwork that you've been seeing. And then Matthew from GSMA, who will be a breakout group facilitator. Stephen from UNHCR, Francis from PHB, Annette from WFB, and Paul, the livelihoods working group co-chair, will all also be breakout group facilitators. So we are very, very excited that so many technical people that are working on digital financial literacy training in practice in Uganda have agreed to participate in an active role in the webinar today. And of course, none the least, the four panelists, Tilda, Alfred, Andrew, and Ronald, who of course will be introduced in more detail when the panel will be starting in the second half of this call. But we're really excited to have all of these heavyweights on the call, and hopefully we'll be able to learn a lot from all of these people and each other. So the meeting today is 2 hours. I'm very sorry, I know it appeared in your calendars as 3 hours. That is an error, apologies, it is 2 hours. So from 3 to 5 EAT, East Africa time. We've been quite overwhelmed by the interest in the topic. We have had a lot of subscriptions for the webinar, so we hope we can live up to your expectations and facilitate an interesting conversation that will allow all of you to go away with extra knowledge and information about what's going on in Uganda on this topic. But of course, in case of any technical issues, please bear with us. They're quite unavoidable in these online meetings, but we're doing our best. Great, I think those are the key points I wanted to flag before we're starting. Maybe just only saying that we're aiming and hoping for a very high-paced event. So please make sure you're focused. I know it's very hard when you're on the computer and the 10 emails are coming in, but this is really something, I think, if we're all in this together, answering the polls, adding to the Jamboard, the breakout groups, and engaging with the panelists, that's just going to make it so much better for everyone. So please engage to the maximum in all of these activities. As you're joining the call, please feel free to drop your name and organization in the chat box. Always nice for people to start introducing themselves. Great, so then I'll move to sharing a little bit about the objectives of today's webinar. So the overall objective really is for everyone on the call to learn from each other, as I flagged already, and from the experts that will be present in the breakout groups as well as on the panel. Learning on what? On current practices in digital financial literacy training in the Uganda refugee response. So very practical, very focused is what we're trying to have here today, so that people can really exchange, make the most of 2 hours of exchanges. Well, we're really hoping that the technical discussions will allow people to make links, with other people that now they understand are also starting to work on these topics, or already engaging on these topics, maybe in similar locations where you're engaging. So that's really the aim. And then also, of course, taking stock of what's already in place in terms of resources, materials, expertise that people who are starting to engage can learn from, can engage with, rather than starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel. And overall hope is, of course, that we can harmonize digital financial literacy training practices at the point where many of us, or many of you, are starting implementation and rollout. So that's really it. So it's an interactive webinar. We'll be using a couple of tools. As I mentioned, we'll have Mentimeter polls, breakout group that will be drafting the questions that we'll ask to the panel, and then a Jamboard and a panel discussion, as you know. The agenda, so we'll be setting the scene first, providing a little overview of what we found in our desk review, and while speaking to some of the key actors in the Uganda refugee response. So we'll kind of provide an overview of what's already happening, and then do a very quick actor mapping using a Jamboard. But this will really be a very short exercise, only 10 minutes. And then we'll move into the meat of the discussion. We'll introduce the panel so that you know who they are. Before we'll break out in groups so that each group can then formulate a question or 2 questions for the panelists, and then come back and start engaging with the panel on those questions. So no pressure for the panelists, but a lot of expectations. Right, and then a little bit on the background of this webinar. So all of this started in March of this year, when we did a research and learning consultation with the Cash Working Group. I can almost not believe it was March of this year. Seems like a lifetime ago. So that was the kickstart of our financial inclusion learning review series that we kind of conceptualized and drafted in April and May. And then in June, we started with first learning review, which was on financial literacy training. And I imagine a lot of you have seen the brief that we'll also be posting in the chat box. The learning brief that has come out of that learning review. We also did an engaging webinar on that. And now we're moving on still moving on some of the follow-up pieces from that, as is the digital financial literacy training webinar we're having today. We're also still engaging on a case study of in Karamoja, interestingly enough, but looking at a sustainability model for financial literacy training, the people that provide financial literacy training and that support that to become agents rather than staff from projects. So really sustainability model, and we're looking at the applicability for the refugee response, and hopefully we'll be able to share that with you all in January, so look out for that. So today, we've come from the Financial Inclusion Learning Review series. It's part of that, but we are joined by another actor today, by the Smart Communities Coalition, who are also engaging on a lot of work on financial inclusion, and had a vested interest in joining us today with all of the prep work and all of the work that we've been doing on trying to compile an overview of what's going on in digital financial literacy training in Uganda. And so let me hand over to Michael for a very, very brief introduction of their interest in being part of this webinar and this experience.
Great, thanks a lot, Marika, and thanks again to everyone for joining. We're excited for the discussion. My name is Mikhail Matasyan, and I'm an advisor with the Smart Communities Coalition team. And just in case you're not familiar with the SEC, it's a coalition co-hosted by USAID and MasterCard. And we're focused on bringing together partners from all different types of sectors together to work on 3 pillars in displacement settings: energy, digital tools, and internet connectivity. And we mostly focus on Kenya and Uganda. And what we do is we try to facilitate knowledge sharing, try to reduce duplication of efforts in these 3 pillars, and also identify partnerships for new projects. So I'll just mention that digital tools, of course, is one of the 3 SCC pillars, and there's been a renewed focus on engaging digital finance practitioners, both companies and NGOs this year, especially leveraging USAID and MasterCard resources to do that, to try to bring awareness, share learnings, and also hopefully start new projects in digital finance. We have a financial inclusion working group that has about at least 15 companies and NGOs that meet on a quarterly basis, share best practices, and hopefully start new projects. And really this year, digital financial literacy trainings became a topic of interest and discussion in the group. So that's one of our main reasons why we're excited for the discussion today, and looking forward to the learning brief. And I'll just mention, if you're interested, there is a public assessment, publicly available assessment that one of our members, Dan Church Aid, produced last year. You can see it there on the right. It identifies barriers, drivers, and other opportunities for DFLT in displacement settings. And that has a lot of really good market and research data on what is the current scene in terms of DFLT in both Kenya and Uganda. So that's available on our website or on Dan Church Aid's website. But overall, really looking forward to the discussion and especially the learning brief afterwards. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see you in the breakout groups. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michael. And we're very happy to have Smart Communities Coalition as part of the team. Just trying to, yes, there we go. Final slide before we go into the scene setting, the background, the landscape is just the methodology. What we've been I've mentioned this already, but we started really by doing a secondary desk review. So really looking at some of the key resources. Of course, a lot of that was already done during the financial literacy training learning review, but we still added on 15 to 20 documents for this particular topic. And then we did 6 specific KIIs with key actors that are implementing or, part of policy building around digital financial literacy training. And so we've produced an analysis, which is an internal document that forms the basis of this webinar today, where we'll kind of feed it in, discuss it, get learning from all of you and fact check some of the things that we found. And then that will all be culminating in producing this learning paper, the learning brief that will be available in January as a public resource for the refugee response. So I think that's enough from me. Now we're moving to the core of the matter. We'll have 20 minutes to set the scene. This will be done by Eunice Mwende from the Cash Working Group, and she'll be giving an overview of the lay of the land and some of the key definitions that we'll be using. And then we'll also highlight 2 interesting ongoing researches by WFP together with UNCDF and Hive Collab, and one from ULearn. So without further ado, over to you, Eunice.
Thank you very much, Marike, for this opportunity, and greetings to everyone from the Cash Working Group. This session is going to just set the pace to understand what's actually happening in Uganda in relation to the digital financial literacy. And we are going to look at the landscape that we have, what are the challenges, and a few other aspects in terms of what research has been done in country to understand better the digital financial literacy landscape in Uganda. One of the key things, and there's a more detailed bibliography if anyone would be interested to have it, and my colleagues will also be dropping links on the discussions that we have and the sources of the information that you're going to be presenting today. Interesting to note that even though the digital access is growing in Uganda, it is still much slower than other countries in the region, including Rwanda, Kenya, and Tanzania. As we speak, Uganda is ranked 20th in the sub-Saharan Africa countries when it comes to ICT. And that means that there is some kind of progress, but it's still lagging behind. Internet penetration in Uganda is at 26%, but there is, of course, an increase on an annual basis. This is something that we have also been able to state from the methodology that Marike had indicated before. Also, it is prohibitively expensive to acquire the hardware, particularly when we are talking about the refugee response. We have noted that the software, and most recently, the government introduced a tax on mobile money transfers, and that contributes to the expenses that prohibit the access to digital services in Uganda. Other than that, the mobile network is the most dominating one. However, much of the country still suffers from network coverage, especially in refugee hosting areas in the north. We have seen that most of the locations do not have access to network coverage, and that could be one of the key challenges why penetration of mobile network is difficult, but also the uptake of digital services is also slow in some of those locations. When you compare the refugee and the host community, generally about 50% of the refugees are likely to have an internet-enabled phone. And this is quite a big challenge because most of them use basic phones that do not have internet coverage. And therefore you can imagine that internet access or access to digital services is going to be always a challenge when this is the case. When we look at the gender divide, men in Uganda are more likely to have a mobile or an internet-enabled mobile phone, while women, in fact, 15% of the women are less likely to own a mobile phone. And 37% of the women are even less likely to use a mobile internet phone. So of course, when you look at this, the lowest inclusion is the female, yeah? Even though the legal and policy environment is very supportive, we know that there's quite a lot that needs to be done so that it can promote more use of digital services. So this is the landscape that we are seeing in Uganda, and I'm glad that we have Bank of Uganda as well as part of this webinar that are going to shed light more on the work that they are doing to enable more digital access when it comes to digital services. So I'm going to allow my colleague now, we'll get into the understanding of what we are actually talking about, the definitions. Most of you were part of us when we did the financial literacy webinar, where we talked about financial literacy being the ability to understand and use basic and personal financial skills such as budgeting and saving. So now I'm going to allow my colleague Marike, who is going to introduce us to a poll on digital literacy and digital financial literacy, just to gauge our minds and see how much we understand to be the definition of those two, of digital literacy and digital financial literacy. Marike, over to you.
Thanks, Eunice. Sorry, it was a little bit too fast with changing to the poll there, but so indeed we're starting a Mentimeter poll now, and if everything's well, Kalain should have dropped the link in the chat box. So please go ahead and open the poll. So the first question is, what does digital literacy mean to you? We're just trying to get everyone to think a little bit, start preparing your mind for the topic at hand, and getting into the zone, as it were. It's just a very quick poll to define two key concepts and get you thinking. So please only take 30 seconds per poll. Just press whatever, type whatever comes to mind. We promise we won't be scoring you. And then Eunice will shortly be taking us through what comes up, and then towards a general definition that we can use.
Interesting to see the answers that are coming up. Thank you, and please continue to contribute to this. I see people saying that digital literacy is the knowledge of technology solutions. It is equitable inclusion. It is the ability to use digital platforms. It is being able to manipulate digital devices, interesting. Ability to and capacity to navigate a simple feature phone and other digital tools to achieve an objective. Others are saying it's the confidence and the competence with digital devices. Very interesting answers. And these answers actually reflect what we have come across as being digital literacy. I'll just sample two more, Marike. One of them is digital literacy means using technologies such as USSD, mobile application, videos, SMSs to train people. Very interesting. And the last one that I'm going to sample today is an answer that says digital literacy are the basic skills in the use of digitized systems and platforms. Very, very interesting answers that are coming out of it. And thank you very much for your participation. I'm just going to define it the way we understand it. I'm going to define digital literacy from the documentation that we have gone through, from the experiences that we have collected through. And digital literacy, in our understanding, is the ability to use digital technology, communication tools, or networks to locate, evaluate, use, and create information. I'm sorry if this is a mouthful. We are going to provide it again. I will just say it again. From how we understand, digital literacy is the use of digital technology and communication tools to locate, evaluate, use, and create information. That's our understanding. Let's go to the next poll. And the next poll, Marike.
Thanks, Eunice. People should be able to use the same link, and now that same link will take them to the second poll, which is on digital financial literacy, the second definition that we wanted to just define together and get everyone thinking about as a starting point for our discussions. So please go ahead and open the link again, and then that should take you to the second question, and I see the answers popping up now. Eunice, back to you.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna sample a few once again. The use of technology in learning financial literacy, that's good. Ability to use digital platforms to access financial services. Having the knowledge and skills required to effectively and safely use digital financial services such as mobile money, interesting answer. Ability to use financial systems and being able to understand and apply and use financial technology. One other answer is it's using financial services through digital devices. Interesting. And I'll sample one more answer. Thank you very much for the feedback that you're providing. It's very interesting, and it actually relates to what we are talking about. One other answer that I'm going to sample says being aware and able to use technology to access information and gaining knowledge on financial management. Very good answers and very correct answers, of course. They relate to financial literacy training that we know. I'm going to provide the meaning on how we understand digital financial literacy to mean. And in our case, we have found out that it's a multi-dimensional concept. So this is where an individual has the knowledge, has the skills, the confidence and competencies, just like you have mentioned, to safely use digitally delivered financial products and services. And that same individual can make informed financial decisions and act in the best financial interest of that individual. So it's the ability to have the knowledge and the skills and the confidence and the competency to use digital devices, digitally delivered financial products and services in a safe manner. I think we are good when it comes to the definitions now. We can move to the next slide, Marike. Yes, so thank you very much for the exercise that we have just done. And for all that digital financial literacy to really take shape, there has to be an access to financial services. So in order to really say that you have digital financial literacy training, you have acquired digital financial literacy training, there has to be the access component, you have to be digitally literate and you have to have financial literacy. I think that's very important for us to remember, that access is a key thing when it comes to defining digital literacy. Just moving to the next slide. So in Uganda, we have seen in terms of the three components that we are discussing about today, we have seen that digital literacy is actually delivered as part of three components. One is a basic level, a mid-level, and an advanced level. So these are the three levels of digital literacy that are offered. However, the most used or the primary need that is being offered right now when it comes to digital literacy is the basic literacy. So what you would call, in other words, the intermediary, the basic literacy training, that is what is being offered. And of course, there is a high digital exclusion. It's because digital literacy in itself is very limited. When it comes to digital financial literacy training, we have seen that it's actually a supplementary component of many programs that are being offered in Uganda. Just like financial literacy training, it is not a standalone. It contributes to other products or other programs that are being implemented. So it is an adjunct, it is a supplementation of what is already existing. Financial literacy training in itself is a supplementation. Digital literacy training in itself is a further supplementation. So many organizations that are supporting refugees in Uganda do not necessarily have a component of financial literacy training. What we have also seen that a lot of the digital financial literacy training that is being offered is focused on mobile money. And because the mobile, and it's actually at the nascent stages. At the moment, it's at 12%, although we can see such a growth that is continuing to happen more regularly. I lost the slide. Thank you. Maybe one of the suggestions is that digital financial literacy training, from what we are seeing, should not only be left to the advanced level. A lot of the organizations that are offering financial literacy training have a plan to advance their financial literacy trainings to a more advanced level. And for them, the interpretation of what is advanced is going digital. But from the definitions that we have seen today, digital financial literacy training should probably not be left as an advanced level of financial literacy training. Those two components go hand in hand. It is not one following the other one. And literacy should not be an impediment to digital financial literacy training in the same way it is for financial literacy training, especially when like groups can be put together. We have seen that many young people, if you put young people together, they are more able to absorb digital financial literacy material as opposed to mixing everyone together. So these are some of the suggestions that are coming out of the studies and out of the interactions that we've had so far on the topic. Next slide, please. So what are the key barriers? As we have discussed before, age is a barrier. Many younger and more educated young people are able to absorb the digital literacy material than the older generation, of course. Gender, as we had discussed before, male are more accessible to have a mobile phone or an internet-empowered phone as opposed to women. We have also seen that education is a key barrier. Many of the refugees that we are supporting in Uganda are illiterate, and therefore they are not able to really grasp the matter when it comes to the digital financial literacy. It is the cost of acquiring the hardware and the software of the phones is quite prohibitive, and therefore continues
We're sorry, Eunice, your sound is no longer very
the
clear.
fact that you need to have data, you know, you need to be able to money fees, getting transport to the agents.
Yes, thank you.
You can hear me better, thank you. So basically what we are saying is that just being able to access the mobile phones where the agents are, the cost of the devices, electricity to charge the mobile phones, and also the more recently introduced government tax is a prohibition, is a prohibitive factor when it comes to as a barrier to digital financial services. And then the language spoken is not most of the time the language spoken by refugees and who have a low literacy level. We talked about the structural barriers where there's poor network coverage, there's poor access to agents. The agents have to deal with liquidity problems that continues to be a problem. There's been a lot of progress when it comes to SIM card registration and acquisition of SIM cards, particularly for the refugee population. But we know that 50% don't have SIM cards. 50% of the refugees do not have SIM cards in their own names. 72% of these ones that don't have SIM cards in their names are women. So you can imagine that this is going to be an exclusion that is going to continue to happen if this is not well addressed. I would like to pass this opportunity to the research that has been done in the country to continue to understand better how the landscape has been done. And I'm going to pass it to Sheila from World Food Programme in Uganda to enlighten us more on the study and research that they have recently done in Uganda on this particular subject matter. Over to you.
Thank you, Eunice, and good afternoon to everyone. In terms of WFP, we are currently collaborating with UNCDF and have collab in a research to understand digital skills demand and to ultimately develop a training kit to the same. And this is mainly with the aim of empowering refugees and host community members to access financial services as we increasingly deliver our assistance using digital channels, but also other organizations as well that are part of the Cash Working Group are progressively moving to digital channels, either through bank accounts, agent banking, or mobile money. So this is becoming increasingly important. And this research will be published in early 2022, together with the National Information Technology Authority of Uganda. And some of the reasons why, some of the key findings and the reasons behind why we are doing this are mainly around, some of the key reasons we're doing this were around increased demand, especially among the youth, women and refugees for this kind of training. As some of you may have heard, we've been doing a series of financial literacy trainings in collaboration with FRC. And through some of the feedback we hear is also around more training around digital literacy, hence the need for us to do this. And some of the gaps we're also trying to fill around affordability, especially for digital solutions, whether it's the hardware, whether it's around soft skills needed. So this is still a barrier. And then also some of the skills that have been identified, digital skills that have been identified that could be enhanced around finances, around agriculture, communication, news access via social media, safety and agricultural technology platforms, and a series of other things. But just to point out that we are not using this as a standalone item. We're looking at it as an addition to other activities we are doing, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's possible linkages of these to livelihood support, or in couple with sensitizations and regular sensitization drives, but also advocacy as may arise from the barriers we anticipate. That's it really from WFP, and in case we do any progress or have any more findings that are published and ready for sharing, we shall be sharing them through the Cash Working Group. Thank you, and over to you, Aleta.
Thank you, Sheila. Hi everyone, my name is Alessa Buehler. I am the research lead for the ULearn consortium. And we are currently in the progress of finalizing a piece of research that I think is or will be very interesting for all of you who are interested in the topic. We are looking at financial services in the Uganda refugee response, and particularly we're looking at user experiences and perspectives. So I mean the ULearn consortium in collaboration with the Cash Working Group. So we've been working very closely with Eunice as well. And the why is we want to understand obviously what is preferred amongst beneficiaries and potential beneficiaries, and that includes refugees as well as host community members. So we are looking at their preferences, both for financial services, humanitarian financial assistance mechanisms, and also understanding why these preferences are as they are. We want to provide a baseline for digital financial literacy and the related basic skills. So we also have data on numeracy as well as basic literacy, both in the refugee and host community contexts. And we want to provide indications on needs to be done to achieve digital and financial inclusion. And you can expect that this piece of research will be finalized latest by February 2022. So hopefully that's something to get us all started into the next year. Yeah, so our key findings, I can already give you a little bit of an insight here. First of all, we found that skills to using basic phones, like making calls or using FM radio are common. However, skills needed to use internet-enabled phones and those phones themselves, that includes smartphones as well as feature phones, they are not common, neither the skills nor the phones themselves. So I think, as Sheila mentioned, the hardware is not present. And we also see that there is a marked gender gap in digital literacy, meaning that both in host communities as well as refugee communities, women tend to have lower digital and basic literacy skills. We also find that only 1 in every 5 host community members, so 21%, and these numbers are representative, I can say. So 21% of host community members report having ever received digital literacy training, and that number is lower for refugees with only 17%. These are self-reported numbers, and all our qualitative data also points to the fact that digital literacy training, as Sheila mentioned, is popular, would be popular, and would influence preferences. So one focus group discussion participant told us, for example, yes, more people would use digital financial services if trained, because they will have, sorry, I have a pop-up that I can't quite get rid of. Yes, so use digital financial services if trained because they will have gained knowledge of using them and would have less or even no doubt about being cheated. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of our research, and I'll hand over to Marijke to keep us going.
Thanks so much, both Aletta and Sheila, for giving us a quick insight into ongoing research. We really look forward to the complete findings, but it's clear from everything that you've been saying, and Eunice too, that scaling up digital financial literacy is really very urgent and needed in the refugee response in Uganda. So I think that's kind of key and clear. So now, before we move into the real panel, a preparation for the panel, we wanted to do a very, very quick actor mapping. We'll be using a Jamboard, and if all is well, Colleen is dropping the link in the chat right now. So here again, if you could just click on that link, it will take you to the Jamboard. I hope most of you have used a Jamboard already, but you will see there are 2 pages on the Jamboard, and bear with me, I'm just gonna change my screen to be with you on the Jamboard. There we go. So there's 2 pages that you can see here on the top. The first one is on the current situation, who is doing what, where. And then the second one is on the near future, who is planning to engage on digital financial literacy training. I hope you're seeing my screen.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yes, okay. So Yes, so please, as an organization, first of all, think, are we already engaging on digital financial literacy training, or are we planning to engage, and choose the appropriate page on the top here. And then you look at, are we doing training on digital financial literacy, or are we delivering digital financial literacy training? What is the difference? Well, digital just means that we're using a digital method like SMS, for instance, to deliver what I would call then classical financial literacy training. So that would be just the method of using, administrating the training would be digital, but actually the content of the training, what is being trained on, is not digital financial literacy. So please pick a sticky note, which you can do here to the left in the middle of the icons, the white square. So I'll just click, you'll see this. You can type on here, and then when you are finished typing, click save, and then you can move your sticky note to where you want it on the screen. So you can do this on either the current situation page or the near future page. It would be great if you can write your organization name and where you operate. I don't see many appearing yet. I presume that was also a lot of information to take in. Apologies for that. So for instance, if I'm working for Grameen and we are doing, at the moment, digital financial literacy training, I'll pick a sticky note and I'll type Grameen implementing trainings and where in Rhino Camp, for instance. And then if I save this, it will go, I can cancel the next one and then put this and put it here, voila. So I can see that the actual Grameen Foundation also put their own sticky notes, so I'm going to delete mine, of course, but it would be great if everyone could do this. The objective being, we kind of have an idea of what's going on at the moment, who's already implementing digital financial literacy training, but we would really like to know who is planning implementation, right? Because this would be a key element for everyone on this call to understand who else is making plans to start engaging on this in the next 6 to 12 months. Who could we potentially collaborate with or just coordinate with if we're planning to operate in the same areas of the country, of the same settlements, for instance. So we'll just keep this Jamboard running. And I think it's in everyone's interest to have it as complete as possible, because if we have enough information here, enough data, it will allow us to move to an actual 4W in the more classic Excel format that we can then share with all of you through the Cash Working Group or other ways. We can add it to the learning brief. It could be a starting point for further engagements and collaboration. But I think in interest of time, we're a little bit behind and I don't want to eat away at the time of the panel. I'll be moving on the calls, the webinar, so I'll move back to the main screen with the slides, but this will remain open until the end of the webinar. And we would really, really appreciate it if all of you, please, could submit your information here. So current situation, page 1, near future, page 2, and then are you implementing training on digital financial literacy, or are you implementing financial literacy trainings using a digital delivery method or mechanism? And just put down your organization name and, if possible, also the locations of where you are operating or where you're planning to operate. That would be really great. Thank you very much for your collaboration. So I'm going to be moving back to the session now, because I'm really also very excited that we're actually moving into the main part, what I consider the main part for kind of preparing for the panel and hearing from all of you. So I will now hand over to my colleague Michael from Smart Communities Coalition, who will be leading us through the next session. First, we'll start by introducing the panel so that all of us know who we can ask, who are the people and the organizations, what are they doing, what questions can we ask them, before we'll go into breakout groups where we can discuss a little bit about the context in Uganda and then formulate questions to ask the panel and come back to actually ask them and get our answers. Thanks. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks so much, Marika. So just like Marika just mentioned, we're excited to move into the panel. Essentially, we've tried to set the scene now, give an overview of what digital financial literacy training looks like in Uganda. But we're really looking forward for the panel and the breakout groups right after this to dive even deeper, give you a chance to ask questions and hear from really experienced experts that have worked in advising, designing, and implementing DFLT for years in sub-Saharan Africa and also specifically Uganda. And so what we'll do is for the next 15 minutes, we'll have our panel speak. And then after that, we'll go to breakout groups where you'll have a chance to reflect on the panel and reflect on your own experiences with digital financial literacy training and actually come up with 1 to 2 questions to then ask the panel once we come back as a plenary group at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'm really excited to invite our panelists that you can see here. Maybe if we can go just back to the slides with the pictures, I can introduce the group. So thanks again to the 4 experts that have joined us. We have Alfred Yeboah, Regional Director for Africa at Grameen Foundation. We have Andrew Kasujja. He's the East Africa lead at Strategic Impact Advisors, or SIA. Tilda Nabbanja, she's the team leader for financial literacy at the Bank of Uganda. And Ronald Rwakigumba, he's the digital finance and humanitarian services specialist at UNCDF in Uganda. So I'll ask each of our panelists to take about 3 minutes to introduce themselves, the work that the organization is doing in digital financial literacy training, and then we'll pass it on to the next panelist. So I'll just kindly ask you to be mindful of time, just so that I have enough time for the breakout groups, and then we'll come back as a group, as an entire group at the end. And we'll have your slides up on the screen as well. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to the panel, and we can start off with Alfred Yeboah from Grameen Foundation.
Yeah,
Alfred?
Thank you, Mikel. My name is Alfred Yeboah, as already introduced, and I work with Grameen Foundation. So Grameen has worked in the digital financial services space across multiple continents for 2 decades, basically empowering rural last mile communities to access and utilize digital platforms to improve their overall resilience and livelihoods. Globally, Grameen's digital financial services programming have 4 mutually reinforcing components. I will explain these 4 components by showing how digital financial literacy training is a part of our Uganda refugee finance solution, a solution that is increasing access to financial services and financial education for women refugees and host communities in West Nile. The first is our suite of digital financial literacy and business skills training, which continues to be a big part of what we do as an organization. Grameen's approach to such training is one that centers on the use of learning needs resource assessment to identify the core knowledge and attitude barriers which limit uptake of DFS. In Uganda, 9,000 members of VSLAs have been trained in digital financial literacy and business skills with a toolkit that supports women refugees to take up mobile money and linkage banking services. Next, we recognize that digital literacy training is best suited as one component of a larger program focusing on strengthening the enabling ecosystem for digital financial services. So we establish or strengthen digitally enabled community agent networks across 4 countries in Asia and Africa to train communities in digital financial literacy. In our India and Philippines program, self-employed female community-based agents provide doorstep digital financial literacy training and related services to up to about 1 million low-income people. We have applied a similar model in Uganda, where 60 women and youth agents are being set up in Bidibidi and Palorinya with startup capital to operate mobile money businesses, while also serving as digital and financial literacy change agents. The third component sees Grameen designing a number of digital tools to facilitate the impact of our DFS work. One of such is a unique digital savings platform called LeisureLink, which enables rural saving group members to digitally record their day-to-day meeting information, and this works offline. 400 VSLAs in Bidibidi, Palorinya, Maji, Ajogo, and Buruli have been onboarded to LeisureLink and have linked their savings to account at Centenary Bank. Good news is that 55 of the groups have received about 110 million Uganda shillings, which is about 30,000 US dollars in loans from RUFI. And access to these loans are bundled with digital financial literacy and business skills training by our digitally enabled community-based literacy change agents. This training ensures that refugees in saving groups are able to successfully utilize the financial service they receive to achieve business success. The last component is working with strategic partners like GSMA in the design and delivery of our digital literacy curriculum, RUFI, which is a microfinance institution on the design of appropriate financial products for women refugees, and then leveraging the mobile money platform of MTN Uganda, and then also working with local fintechs like Uganda, NALCOM, the Office of the Prime Minister, and other development partners to sustain the delivery of the digital financial literacy training in refugee settlements in Uganda. Thank you all, and I will now hand over to Andrew from Strategic Impact Assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alfred. My name is Andrew Kasujja, and I'm the East African lead at Strategic Impact Advisors. We're based out of US and with presence in West, East, and Southern Africa and parts of Asia. I'll dive straight to the topic of the day and taking you through what we've done around digital financial literacy trainings, digital finance, and as well as digital finance literacy. So we've worked in this sector for the last 8 years, from 2013. And in this, we've been covering a number of digitizations. And of course, our latest is to cover the literacy portion, for which a program has been ongoing for the last 1.5 years. And it's called the Hey Sister program, where we look at topics that are contentious and those that are really touching the bottom of the pyramid all the way to the top of the pyramid. This has been implemented through a number of implementing partners, ranging from implementing partners in the refugee space, financial institutions, as well as non-government organizations within Uganda and our areas of operation. So part of the things that we've come up to realize is that the financial knowledge is the gateway to financial liberation. So a financially literate population will have better choices in what they do, as well as they will have what to use resources for strategically in ways that have been given to them through the financial literacy trainings. So we've also learned that as you design these curriculums, you need to look at the modules through which these curriculums can be implemented. And these have given us a way to look at harnessing audio, animations, as well as putting these on interactive voice response, such that whether someone can read or not read, they are able to interact with this kind of information. So we've done that in multiple modules, where you look at the voice, like I mentioned. We have them on our website, as well as in animations that people can look at these different topics, ranging from use of mobile money, use of mobile phones, sending, receiving, avoiding scams. So we chose those topics that are usually looked at by implementing partners in order to enable their beneficiaries to get literate around this. So the engagements on DFLT in Uganda, we did a research on smallholder farmers, the awareness skills capacity on DFS in Uganda. And this gave, of course, birth to a number of things, including digital financial literacy, where we looked at our partners that USAID had put under the organization to get to know how to skill their people and prepare them to start receiving transfers, to create these digital ecosystems where money remains within that space instead of cashing out. So that research was published on our website, and I'll drop the link in the chat box for all folks to have a look. Then we have the Hey Sister that I've been explaining. We've developed a curriculum of about 25 skits. Source, you can go to the website and download these. They are also on the 161 option 4. As long as you have an Airtel SIM, you are free to call in and listen to topics of your preference on the platform that has been loaded with our content. Then we have the in-person way of training, where we work through implementing partners that have groups that need this curriculum and hence seed the curriculum within these groups. And this content has also been put in multiple languages, the major languages within Uganda, and that is English, Luganda, Lugbara, Acholi, Runyakitara, Ateso, for people to basically appreciate the content from the grassroots. I think that is all that I had to present to you today. We'll continue interacting, and I'll drop the link of the content within the chat box. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And now we'll turn it over to Tilda from Bank of Uganda. Tilda, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, now I do. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this plenary, and it's a pleasure to share our position from the Bank of Uganda Financial Literacy section. So as introduced, my name is Tilda Nabbanja, Turia Agenda, and I'm the team leader handling financial literacy in the bank. Now, the key contributions we could add to this discussion is first off, the usage of digital financial services is a key and pertinent issue as we speak in the bank, as we are looking at ways to go cashless. And possibly to someone listening in, you may think this is totally moving away from cash usage, but it's more onto the lines of basically using less of cash and increasing the reliance, trust, and basically usage of the digital financial services. So sensitization is really crucial, and on our side, we have really put in efforts in having a lot of public awareness initiatives that are aimed at increasing the knowledge on usage of e-payments, DFS, and all related digital elements, such that we can enhance the payment system usage in the country. Now, of course, one of the key observations is that it's good that we started off this discussion linking digital finance to possibly literacy to financial literacy. And one of the key aspects that we stand for under financial literacy is the issue of keeping the messages as simple as possible. So we find that with simplicity and ease of understanding these messages, they can ably cut across all education levels and people from all walks of life. And this is something that policymakers need to be mindful of. And of course, the implementing partners as far as DFL is concerned. Then what the bank has done is that it has incorporated a DFL in the strategy for financial literacy in Uganda 2019-2024, such that for all the different priority groups, of course, forcibly displaced persons inclusive, issues to do with DFL must be addressed. And of course, given the growing concern and the growing need for DFS literacy, digital financial literacy, the key messages on DFL have also, we are designing them to be a standalone and not incorporated in basically the general knowledge under financial literacy, such that we can give them the attention that is required for people to understand these issues much better. Then, of course, we really look out for the measurement element. Much as a lot of programs are being rolled out in the DFL space, there is still need to have a level of measurement. And one of the tools the bank has used is the financial capability survey and results. It's a demand side survey to speak to what a typical person in Uganda out there is basically how they are handling the DFS issues. And this is the first demand side data survey that we have carried out to inform the usage of DFS in the country. And for the implementing partners out there, the results from this survey can better inform how to implement various initiatives across the country. Then, of course, we as policymakers, the bank has partnered with other central banks across the world under the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. And we developed the guideline note and toolkit that can basically provide strategic guidance to policymakers, development partners, and other entities that are looking at exploring this space. And through the guideline note, we are able to understand how best DFL can be integrated in the policy formulation of a given country. All in all, issues to do with DFL implementation in a country, we greatly advise, and of course, through the AFI guideline note and toolkit, we greatly emphasize that it's also easier to implement in a given country if they are integrated in the National Financial Inclusion Strategy and the Financial Literacy Strategy of that given jurisdiction. Allow me to stop there for now, and it's a pleasure being part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tilda. We appreciate it. And I'll turn it over, last but not least, to our panelist from UNCDF, Ronald.
Hi, Michael. Let me see if my, looks like it just proceed with the audio. I think I have, okay. So thanks indeed. Nice to listen from Tilda, Andrew, and Alfred. And I think one of the, so my name is Ronald Rwakigumba, and I'm with UNCDF, where I work as the technical and services. So essentially, Sheila did share some of the partnership we have on developing tools, because I think this is a key part in the delivery of DFLT. And as I've heard from Tilda, Alfred, and Andrew, there's a lot of resources available. And that's why it was important in developing these tools to be cognizant of the existing body of knowledge. And so essentially the aim was to find out what also Alfred touched on, what are the learning needs, what are the gaps in terms of the aspirations. But I must mention, because of course, COVID and everything happening around the increased use of digital services, there is also a component which many in the humanitarian space are aware of, which is you have the tools, but how do you deliver them? So one of the important lessons we are looking to learn is what are the preferred avenues, the effective testing various tools. There's a lot of learning in other countries, how they which tools they've used to deliver. And so just so you're aware, there is a potential that in delivery of digital financial literacy, that a certain layer of exclusion does come in, not as a result of people not being interested in learning, but in how the digital literacy is delivered. And so there's that kind of barrier which can be overcome, and that's why it's a significant component of our learning, which is finding what people are in need of, and also making sure that the mechanisms of delivering such trainings are inclusive. I think what we also see at UNCDF, and I think Eunice touched on it, is that there is an awareness that digital financial services, of course, are no end of their own. And the intention really is to be cognizant of the various use cases that customers use these digital financial services for. So we know that there's been a growth in digital payments, there's been a growth in new customers, and there also a lot of humanitarian. There's also a growth in use cases where people can, for example, purchase inputs digitally. And so that's one additional component. And then essentially develop other, say, digital literacy, not beyond digital financial services. And I think Marike also spectrum of, for example, someone looking to pay school fees through mobile money, someone looking to sell their merchandise through, mobile, or either smartphone or basic phone use cases. So essentially, that's kind of the gist of what's we look to achieve next year, which is have a client-led toolkit on digital literacy, and you will notice a lot of the digital financial services are at least 3 steps in operation. So, for example, someone obviously will know how perhaps to turn on their phone, but then there's a couple of other steps that they take. So we've taken the approach of embedding DFLT within a digital literacy toolkit to kind of both take care of the pre and post steps of transacting, but also kind of meet the other need, which is about other use cases. So thank you very much. And I really look forward to, it's gonna be publicly available and hosted by NITA Uganda. And we look forward to learning together, and hopefully by end of Q1 of next year, the resource will be available, and then we'll move on to training. And at this point, we will, because it's open source, we will be welcoming organizations that are interested in testing its efficacy. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ronald, and to all of our panelists. Really interesting and timely insights. A lot of, just from that quick presentation, there's a lot of data-driven tools that are being used, learning needs assessments, and also it seems like partnerships between different implementing partners, government, which is really great to see. So hopefully that gave you a sense of, to go a little bit deeper into digital financial literacy training. So we're gonna try to go even deeper now with our breakout groups. And I'll just quickly mention how this essentially will work. So there's about 100 folks in the audience right now, and we'll have 6 breakout groups, each led by a facilitator. So you'll be randomly placed into a breakout group, and your facilitator will introduce themselves, their work, and also begin to ask questions to start the conversation. So to our facilitators, just in the interest of time, I'll note that you'll have approximately 20 minutes, and we kindly ask you to first prioritize coming up with 1 to 2 questions for a specific panelist. So asking your breakout group, what did you find interesting? Are there any sort of pressing questions or things you'd like to learn more about? And formulate a question or two, and there will be a co-facilitator with you to take notes. So I'd kindly ask you to focus first on the questions, and then if there is time to also feel free to, of course, have a discussion on your own reflections and experience with digital financial literacy training. And then when we come back after those 20 minutes, we'll be together all again as a plenary session, and we'll actually have the chance to mention or ask those questions to our panelists. So we'll go group by group, and I'll have access to the questions and then pose them to specific panelists. So we'll focus on first making sure that those questions are asked. And of course, any notes that you take, any discussion that happens in the breakout group will still be recorded, written down, and summarized in the learning brief. So hopefully that all sounds good. I think we can just go to the next slide, and I can mention other parts of the breakout group. So first, again, I asked the breakout groups to first come up with their own questions, but if you have time, please feel free to use these as kind of reflective questions to have your own discussion. What are the challenges associated with implementing DFLT in Uganda? And then second, how can we overcome these challenges, or who bears responsibility in each situation? And then if we go to the next slide, I can just quickly mention and introduce our facilitators. So we have 6 groups. We have Matthew for group 1, Stephen 2, Francis 3, Annette 4, Paul 5, and Charlene 6. And again, you'll be placed randomly, but we presume it'll be about 15 to 20 individuals per breakout group. And we'll come back here in about 20 minutes to then pose our questions to the panel. So thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the breakout groups. I think it might just take 1 minute, so please bear with us.
Hi, everyone who's in this main session. You have been assigned breakout rooms. Please join the breakout session. If you move to the bottom of your screen where you have options or more, you'll find an invitation waiting. Or if not, there should be a notification on your screen right now. Agnes, Paul, and Ronnie, I think you're the only 3 left in this main session. You've been assigned breakout rooms. Kindly join the breakout rooms. Hello, Agnes and Patrick. You've been assigned the breakout rooms. Kindly join your breakout sessions. Agnes, are you able to join your breakout session? Hello to everyone who has just joined. You are currently in the main session, but I have assigned you breakout rooms. Please join the breakout room. Thank you.
It looks like folks are coming back into the plenary session. Maybe we can just give a few more seconds for the rest of the group to come back. Great, I think we have everyone. Thanks again to all the group facilitators for leading the discussions. Hopefully you found it to be interesting to talk to colleagues that are working in the same space and come up with questions for the panel. So we have about 25 to 30 minutes left in the webinar, and we'll dedicate this to asking several of the questions that you posed, and we have notes on them. We'll pose them to different panelists. And if there's time, of course, we can take more from the audience or feel free to put some in the chat. I'm just trying to consolidate these questions and we can then get started, and I'll ask our panelists to feel free to respond. I'll direct them to one panelist, but of course, if you'd like to chime in and add, please do. Please feel free to. And I'll mention that all the notes, all the discussions will be saved and will be summarized for the learning brief. So maybe we can start off with a question for Alfred from Grameen. So the question comes from group 4, and they ask, how is Grameen dealing with device acquisition and sustainability in terms of phones? Who provides the phones for the programs that you're implementing?
Yeah, thank you. So as it is, the project, is being funded. We have donors, and the funds are not provided to all of the members of the savings groups. Rather, there is one smartphone that is dedicated to each of the savings groups, and the leadership of the savings groups are those that are trained to use the LedgerLink application basically to digitalize the day-to-day activity. And then the data can be made available to a microfinance institution to inform their credit decision making, and therefore provide access to loans for these groups and also provide them digital financial literacy training. So as it is, the project provides specific phones for each group and not for all the group members. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alfred. There is a question, and other panelists, Ronald, Tilda, Andrew, please feel free to chime in or add on if you'd like to. But if not, there is another question from group 5. This one's for Ronald. How can we tackle the issue of breaking down the digital financial literacy training curriculum into formats that are accessible to all? So this question came up in my group as well. Thinking about visual as well as written for those that are illiterate, or maybe thinking about local languages. How can we sort of integrate these different components or considerations into DFLT curriculum?
Yeah, indeed, great question, Mikhail. So I think one thing to learn from the traditional, say, if I may call it traditional, but actually the mother financial literacy training, I say mother because the key skills around savings, investment, planning for retirement, and credit are all very key components. And what digital financial literacy does is make people comfortable with accessing those services through various digital platforms. I think one of the things that I say we learned from that is that in Bank of Uganda, in the early days of rolling out financial literacy, a lot of the way it was delivered was not in a classroom type of training room type of thing. There were a lot of plays. I really enjoyed listening to them on the radio. There are a lot of skits that were acted. And so I think when we think about digital literacy, we need much more of those low digital avenues, because we want to, first of all, reduce the lack of confidence of trying to learn a new skill in a platform that's already challenging. So I think visual, for example, when we look at what some of the players in the market do in agriculture, where like Access Agriculture, where they do farmer trainings, but they do them using video. I think what we are hoping to learn is beyond, say, group meetings and audio-visual platforms, what avenues the communities find best. So one of the models we are trying to use is called the Digital Community Entrepreneur Model, because the challenge with, I think also it was raised earlier in the previous question around access to devices, the challenge you have is you want hands-on skills. So get a driving license with a vehicle, having driven a vehicle kind of thing. So what digital community entrepreneurs do is they do have devices that they can demonstrate and ask community members to experiment with. So I really think there's no clear answer, Michael, other than to break as many barriers as possible in the delivery. And maybe that's just visual, but hopefully it's visual coupled with actual hands-on access. Thanks.
That was great. Thanks, Ronald. It seems like we definitely need to be thinking about all these different kinds of media. Maybe just a follow-on question, and I'll pose this to Andrew. Given your experience with the Hey Sister program, how do you go about also? How does your team go about sort of integrating, different cultural aspects or norms, maybe gender aspects into the training? Because my understanding is there's a big gender focus in the training program. So like, how do you go about sort of designing it with these different social cultural considerations?
Thank you very much. As we design the program and as we design these curriculums, they are multiple sex in nature, and of course, given the cultural dynamics within the setting in which we train, you need to get the buy-in of the men within these societies. So when they understand what you are trying to seed, then it is easier to seed the message, and it is easier for the women to relate directly with the trainers or through the organizations in which they relate. So it is, as you design whatever curriculum you are trying to design within the Ugandan context, you need to look at the gender flip on the other side. What are the dynamics of these different regions that you are going in? So once you get the buy-in of the men on one side, and this has come progressively through different curriculums that we've developed, once you get the buy-in, then it will be easier to seed the curriculum within the female community.
Thanks a lot for adding that. That's useful to know. If there are no additions from the other panelists, I could find another question.
Could I just chip in a little there? Another thing is, if you make them also less person in person, you will get many women calling in or listening in from different phones or their own phones. So once you have the IVR platform, then the woman has the agency to actually call in and listen to what they want to listen to, even without the permission of the man. Yeah.
Got it. Yep. Thanks for adding that. We have a question that I think I can direct to Tilda. So this is about affordability of digital financial literacy training. Kind of broadly, is there anything that could be done to bring down the costs for DFLT? Specifically, maybe how does the government think about this in terms of regulation, and is there something that can be done in collaboration with government or the Bank of Uganda on input to those regulations related to affordability?
Okay. Okay, that's a good question to start off. And when we are looking at costs, it can possibly be broken down into two categories of DFL, whereby you can look at it from the angle of disseminating DFL awareness and the cost implication of that versus generally usage of DFS platforms in the country and the cost related to that. Now, generally, the digital usage costs are high, yes. And you find that through collaborations with the relevant entities in the country, Bank of Uganda is able to raise the issues cited from the public, such that, for example, if you're looking at NITA, you're looking at UCC, they are able to incorporate the observed concerns and act accordingly. But the most that the entity can do is to pass on these observations to the relevant authorities. This is majorly done through the working group meetings of the National Financial Inclusion Survey, where all the key stakeholders in the financial space of Uganda get to discuss these topical issues. So yes, the cost could be high or may be high, but there are ongoing discussions on the basically handling that challenge. But when we are looking at the DFL knowledge dissemination, still there is a lot of collaboration with development partners, government agencies, and other bodies that are interested in enhancing the access to financial literacy or DFL information to given segments in society. So the bank, through the strategy of financial literacy in Uganda, partners with various entities to be able to basically manage the cost implication of information dissemination. So of course, it's up to the given entity that would like to roll this out to liaise with the central bank and see how best a given intervention can be carried out as cost effectively as possible. I think that's what I would have to share on that. Yeah.
Thanks, Tilda. And I see Alfred, please feel free to come in.
Yeah, just to chip in and say that what we are learning from other countries that we are finding useful is that for the sustainability of the delivery of some of these digital financial literacy trainings, you should be able to keep the knowledge at the community level. So we have identified, for instance, owners and operators of convenience shops in communities, in rural communities, who are selling fast-moving consumable goods. Train them, provide them the skills, provide them the tool to, in addition to the sales of the fast-moving consumer goods, also provide digital financial literacy training to their communities. That way, you are bringing it to the doorsteps of the communities in a cheaper and innovative way. So that these are some of the models that we are learning of from other places that we feel can, substitute for cheaper means of providing this kind of digital financial literacy training on a sustainable basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. And just for context, where what are those other settings or countries that you're working in that you're pulling in those lessons from?
So we are Philippines, and then in India, and then currently implementing in Ghana.
I'll just quickly go back to Tilda, because I thought her input was really interesting from the perspective of the bank. There's a kind of related question specifically on KYC, on I believe on Know Your Customer regulations. Do you have any thoughts on what KYC is acceptable for financial institutions or development organizations to serve refugees with the available products and services that relate to digital finance? Any thoughts on the KYC in Uganda?
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, KYC remains a big challenge in this segment of our society. But we have seen that in Uganda, the OPM, the Office of the Prime Minister, has put in deliberate effort to see that there is issuance of the refugee ID. And the question in relation to basically access to digital services, for example, mobile money or SIM card registration, I think that part of the challenge in Uganda has been greatly addressed, because if you look at the KYC requirements by that MNOs, the mobile network operators in Uganda, they have provided for the usage of the refugee ID alongside the generally national ID that's used by the host communities in Uganda. So I believe that's a great development in the right direction. But of course, there are still efforts to see that there is issuance of more of these IDs to possibly more of the youth and other adults in that category. So I think that can be a response to that question. Thanks.
Sure, thanks a lot. That definitely does respond. This next one is about training, up-training or skilling refugees themselves in developing curricula and tools. I'm curious, Ronald, if you have thoughts on this. So the question is, or if anyone else would like to add after Ronald, what is the role of refugees in expanding DFLT? As in, is anyone thinking of skilling refugees in developing apps that can support expansion of DFLT so that they are contributing to this space beyond being consumers of content and services? I'm curious, Ronald, if this is something you're looking at or thinking of from UNCDF's perspective.
Yeah, indeed, that's a great, first of all, the philosophy behind the question of being participants in their own destinies. And we've seen this, for example, in the case of agency banking in Nakivale, where initially it was not easily to fathom that refugees on their own as entrepreneurs would be able to distribute well over $200,000 a month at the beginning. And yet here we are, and almost 80% of all the agents in bank agents in Nakivale are refugees, and same in Oruchinga and who knows where else. So I think it's a good flip on the receiving versus being participants in the growth. I think there's a middle ground, Mikhail, which is worth noting, that some technologies can provide, some digital technologies can provide revenue generating opportunities for refugees as entrepreneurs. And we've seen this case in the past. I think it was Dan Church Aid, Masico, and UNCDF did have a hack for refugees kind of innovation challenge. And one of the things that came out was a marketplace for refugees to sell handcrafts and access better markets outside of the settlements. So there are three options, but I must admit that on refugees as development entrepreneurs or developers or coders, I think it underlines a different kind of digital literacy that may be of interest, which is rather than wait for a pipeline of refugee innovators because they have brilliant ideas and they have a unique competitive advantage because they're embedded in the community which they're innovating from. Because I've seen in the earlier cases, developers who are not in the settlements travel to, say, Bidibidi and spend maybe a week there trying to understand trying to have a user-centered design approach for their products. So I think there is an opportunity, but it has not been, I've not seen it explored much. But I would say that the gap is also about whether, the most refugee settlements do not have a secondary school. And so what are the opportunities for skilling beyond, say, vocational education, which sometimes only focuses on carpentry or woodwork and the like. So I think there is another layer behind that question, which is how do we participate in a more holistic skilling at the refugee space, but also for those who already have those skills, I think, how do we tap into that? Thanks. It was a great question, and I don't think I have a positive answer yet. Thanks.
I think you have a great perspective on it. I mean, this is definitely something we're seeing. I'd say even in other spaces like energy, internet connectivity, agriculture. I mean, focusing on entrepreneurship opportunities for the refugees themselves, which is, so it's great to hear that you're thinking about this. Does anyone else from the panel have thoughts on this? The sort of the role of maybe entrepreneurship or refugee skilling to deliver DFLT or to be part of delivering the solution?
Yeah, I feel a good starting point can also identify local fintechs, right? And then incentivizing them to bring on board some of these daring and motivated refugees. And then in that way, they are able to pick up skills and then learn on the job and then independently be able to do things. So local fintechs, a real role in all of this and bringing refugees on board. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. And if I could ask folks that are not speaking to kindly go on mute, we can hear from the panel for the rest of the questions. I think we have a few more minutes here. I see another question. I think someone might still be off mute. There's a question for Alfred related to the incentives given to the community trainers that Grameen works with. So the question is, on the sustainability of incentives given to the community trainers, and can it be replicated in the refugee context? How are they working with the Bank of Uganda to ensure that trainers are certified?
Yes, I think that's a good one. So as it is, the project is providing stipends, and other non-financial incentives for the community-based trainers. But again, as I already indicated, we are finding a more sustainable way for these community-based trainers to provide this digital financial literacy training. And that is by giving them startup capital and setting them up to start and grow successful micro businesses as mobile money vendors. And then in other geographies, for example, in India, we have self-sustaining, agents who also sell other pro-poor products alongside providing the digital financial literacy to their communities. So for us, by providing the startup capital and setting some of these, especially women and youth, agents up as mobile money vendors who are raising some revenue from providing these services, then in a way we can also continue to provide the training that they need to serve as digital financial literacy change agents for their community. So that is just one way by which we are looking at sustainability and also providing some sustenance for the providers of these DFLTs in their communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. I think that definitely answers it. I'll just go to the chat and note a few observations from our group facilitators. So thanks again to those facilitators for noting observations. For example, Stephen from Group 2 notes a couple highlights like about mobile network operators and estimating their coverage across areas of operation, the awareness of risks and threats associated with the use of digital financial solutions, and the huge costs of accessing and using digital services, which we spoke a bit about with Tilda. And then there are a few other observations here from Group 3 and 4. So I'd encourage you to look over these in the chat, and these will all definitely be included in the learning brief. Maybe one more question as we wrap up here. I see there is one. Another one for Tilda. Seems like folks are interested in what the Bank of Uganda is working on. So Tilda, what support does the bank have, or what plans does the bank have in place to link telecoms to refugee DFLT and make them collaborate with humanitarian agencies in regards to reducing the internet data costs and also in general just to support DFLT? So are you working with the telecommunication agencies, and what does that look like maybe for future plans as well?
Okay, now most of the interventions rolled out by the central bank are through collaboration with the relevant agencies or entities in that particular space. So if we're looking at issues to do with DFS and basically the usage of these services, safety, and general awareness on how effectively they can be rolled out, yes, the bank collaborates with the key players in the space to see that the issues highlighted are addressed. Now, as the bank, we have also had an opportunity to work closer with the development partners. We are aware that Mexico is doing something with the urban refugees in regard to financial literacy training. We have seen a World Food Program in partnership with the Finnish Refugee Council doing a remarkable job in the various camps to see that knowledge and dissemination of financial literacy information is rolled out. And we are in close collaboration with the partners that are seeking to work with the bank in this space to see that the DFL knowledge is also brought out and made clear and relevant to the target audience, in this case, the FDPs. Now, you find that if we look at the interventions by UNCDF, we are also working closer with them to see that we can collaborate and understand what is necessary in the market and also how we can work together to roll this out. So like I normally say in similar platforms, collaboration is key, and the central bank is ready to collaborate with all entities that seek to enhance the knowledge in the DFL space and also access to the various services therein. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tilda. I'll just ask any final thoughts or comments from anyone on our panel before we wrap up.
Probably just quickly to say that digital financial literacy is a huge topic or skill, and it is important for us to prioritize what is needed most. So it immediately provides some kind of value, and then we can layer on that for more training and skills development later. So that's something probably we can also have in mind. Thank you.
No, just to say thanks from my side. I think the openness with which colleagues have shared what's happening on the spectrum is very impressive, and I really I'm positive. The future looks positive in terms of advancing this conversation in Uganda and as a guinea pig maybe for other markets. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for putting this together and bringing the different stakeholders in the room. I think the discussion was very fruitful, and it provides different insights to the different players, ranging from regulators, implementing partners, donors, to see to it that we look at the different pain points, as well as the different portions that need to be pieced together in order to deliver to the last person these digital financial literacy trainings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for setting all this up. I'd like to thank the ULAN team for following up with us and helping us to be able to have this discussion. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for the enriching discussion that we've had this afternoon, and thank you for creating time for this. And for the rest of the participants, thank you for being part of this dialogue. And I'm greatly positive about the fact that DFL and its growth in not just Uganda, but world over has become a topical issue, I think, in the past couple of years. But with this kind of engagement, we can make it more meaningful, simplified, and seamlessly applicable to our people from all walks of life. So thank you so much for this, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Tilda, and thanks to everyone on the panel. I'll just also quickly say thanks to our 4 panelists and our 6 facilitators. And I thought you all did a great job in summarizing or wrapping up the panel. I'll quickly turn it over to my colleague, Eunice, for some final words.
There's been a very interesting conversation today, and I just want to thank everyone who's participated on it. Thank you, Yulan. Thank you, SCC, WFP, the panelists, and everyone who's made it a success today. So today is just the beginning of a long journey that we are going to walk together. And the Cash Working Group, with support from partners like Yulan and donors like FCDO, are going to ensure that this conversation doesn't stop here. We are going to continue to speak about the interest of DFLT because we have seen that the urgency to scale up is very clear. We have also seen that the refugees are becoming an interesting population to serve, and DFLT can not only serve them to meet their basic needs, but also to provide an income avenue. Thank you to Bank of Uganda for bringing in the front part of how we need to continue coordinating and collaborating. We're looking forward to being part of that National Financial Inclusion Working Group that is discussing issues on DFLT in Uganda. And also, we have had a lot of interesting topics today that the Cash Working Group would like to take up. We have talked about innovativeness. In our group, we had about looking at other non-internet related ways of serving refugees, such as reverse billing, and this is quite interesting. There's never been a time that we can be more innovative as humanitarian actors as now. And some of these points that have been taken up, we are going to take them up and discuss them better, including how we can, bring in the entrepreneurial part, but also the gender perspective on how we can serve refugees better. So there is going to be a learning brief that is coming out of the discussion we are having today that is going to be disseminated by the Uganda Cash Working Group at the end of January. So please, let us seize this opportunity to start from a good footing and not to catch up later with curriculums and targeting and all these discussions that we saw when we were having a discussion on the analog financial literacy trainings. So thank you, everyone. And you can bet that this discussion will continue to happen so that we can improve our services and have a holistic approach to digital financial literacy in Uganda. I would like to wrap this webinar by saying thank you to all the participants, and we'll speak soon. Over.
Thank you everyone for joining. It was really interesting, and I also see people are filling in the poll, so that's great. Looking forward to talking with you very shortly. Bye everyone.
So I will go ahead and close the meeting right now. Thank you everyone for joining.